Alright, so we ended the last lecture where we figured out um, that we were going to use the PSR to get to the PS and the PSR, the principles of simplicity and the principle of sufficient reason, to get to um, an objective sense of what morality is and on what basis are we going to believe what other people have to say, and how do we judge if it's the truth. So we were wondering how we were going to trust or um, accept that something about the GCB that other people have to say, right? And that is in context with we're trying to figure out who the GCB is, and these people were claiming to know what the GCB wants us to do. And remember, we had said that we were only concerned with um, monotheism because uh, our conception of a GCB does not allow for more than one, right? So here we are um, with the belief that other people are real and that um, it is moral to be considerate of other beings, other conscious beings, right? And this is where we stand now, um, with a sense of morality. Now, how do we figure out what to do with this? So the question here is, um, there is epistemic justification for believing that John is in physical pain, right? And that justification, if you recall from the previous lecture, was that the simplest reason for why John reacts like he is in pain is that John is in pain and that John is a conscious being. So, therefore, we have reason to believe that uh, John is in physical pain. And so, from my perspective, I know that physical pain is bad. Therefore, there's epistemic justification believing that John is a conscious being and that from his perspective, pain is also bad. So there is epistemic justification for believing that no conscious being wants to be in pain, and so we are justified in believing that inflicting pain on John is morally wrong, right? Now, here's the problem, and it's a significant problem. Why should we be interested in doing the morally right thing? So, I know it's wrong to inflict pain on John, but let's say that inflicting pain on John gets me something. I don't know, something. So you know how in some scenarios, so let's say if John owns a Ferrari and I want a Ferrari, why should I care about what John thinks? Why shouldn't I just take that Ferrari? I mean, I understand that it's morally wrong and that if someone did that to me, it would be, I wouldn't like it. That's why John wouldn't like it. But why should I care about what John wouldn't like or would like? So that's a moral question, right? Why why should we do the right thing or the good things? What's the point there? Um, and even if I have an understanding of what is moral, why should I do anything that is moral? I mean, even if I have a reason to believe in God, which, as we've gone through the course, we have reason to believe in God's existence. I don't really know. I don't really know what God wants me to do. I don't know it, right? Um, we can get so we used a posteriori arguments like the teleological and the cosmological arguments, and we used the a priori argument, the ontological commitment argument, to reach to get a justification for a belief in God. but we can't use any arguments to figure out what God wants us to do. That stuff we don't have access to, right? How would we know? Uh, we wouldn't. So, how do I know that God wants me to do the moral thing? I mean, how do I get there? Uh, and maybe you do, right? So, for now, we've said that we're not going to look at polytheistic religions. So, let's see what the monotheistic religions have to say. And the whole line of monotheistic religions can be attributed to the Hebrew tradition, right? It started with um, Abraham or Hazrat Ibrahim, uh, like the ones that exist today. So, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And Judaism is just the first stem of the Hebrew tradition after Moses, right? But they believe in all of the prophets from Abraham till Moses, and their book, the Old Testament, that it has um, revelations, like, so not all of it was recorded, but they have recorded revelations from all of the prophets up till Moses. And the the moral principle that we came up with from PS and PSR, and that principle was that since you're a conscious being, you should do what you wouldn't want other people to do to you, right? So that was the basis, right? Since you're real and you have reason to believe that other people are real, so don't do anything to them that you don't want them to do to you, right? um, so similarly in the Hebrew tradition you can get similar moral principles, right? So in Judaism, you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your kinsfolk. Love your neighbor as yourself. So treat them as you would treat yourself. Christianity, um, in everything, then do to others as you would have them do to you. Same thing. In Islam, you get the same with um, a little bit more, right? So in Islam, you don't just do to others as you would have them do to you, do better, right? So in Islam, preferably, if you can, you should treat others better than you treat yourself, or better than you uh, think of yourself, right? Okay. Right. So do we have some sense of then um, how to ground the moral principles? Do we have an idea of what God wants us to do? Um, so God wants me to be moral. Is that it? Like, um, now that you're getting some answers, I don't think that's the first question, right? And even if God wants me to be moral, why? Like, why, why am I supposed to be moral? And even an even more basic question is, why am I even here? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? What is going to happen if I act morally? What is the purpose, right? And that's the whole point. um, if we have reason to believe that, and this is separate from this religious studies point, but if we have reason to believe that God created the universe, there has to be a reason why God created the universe, right? and and why God created us or me, um, if I focus on that. So those are all important questions, and that is, so this was a little sense of where morality comes in, and morality is how we behave with respect to others and how we should be behaving with others. And unless you have an anchor, and by the way, God is a sufficient. If you ask the reason why should I be moral, uh, God is the only explanation for why you should be moral, right? Because um, no other explanation will tell you why it's good to be good, right? Unless someone who made you wants you to be good, okay, then yeah, sure. um, and if you're going to get like rewarded or punished, um, but then the question of reward and punishment comes in. And let's look at what we have, like what all of us have. And we're born with no memory or knowledge of the purpose of our existence, and that is the case for every one of us, right? And we're similar but different, unique, right? And then you can ask the question, why are we different? Couldn't we be the same? And if we are different and we have reason to believe that we are designed or created with a purpose, the simplest reason is that we are designed to be different. So it doesn't make sense for us to just follow what everyone else is doing, right? It doesn't make sense for us to be born and without questioning anything believe everything that our culture tells us. It doesn't matter what culture we're born in, because that is not up to us. So whatever the reason of our existence is, whatever the purpose of our existence is, we are expected to question. At least that much is quite clear, right? We're not expected to follow what everyone else is doing. And by the way, if we look at um, the tradition, it started with Abraham. And throughout these books, if you read the story or the narratives about Hazrat Ibrahim, um, before it was revealed to him that he was a prophet, his path began with questions. He was trying to figure out what was going on around him, right? So he understood that he he had some sense that it was whatever he was looking at was well designed, and he had the sense to question that the things around him that were deemed gods, they wouldn't be able to create what was going on around him. So then he looked at the sun, the moon, the stars, and then he went through a process of thinking about what was going on, right? He's trying to figure out what was it that could explain everything, right? And um, in that sense, this whole tradition is exists in that sense, in that spirit, right? And this is where this um, lecture or this course, this is how that relates to spirituality. The whole point of the course from the beginning was aimed at trying to figure out what was going on, and it starts from any simple question, right? So you can look around yourself, ask why are these things the way they are, and then you'll go through the same, whatever question you ask, you'll go through the same path. You can ask why was this universe created, and we asked that question in the course. And at some point we're going to ask why are we here. Because if you ask the question about the universe, things become apparent um, that you can ask the question, why am I here? And so none of this is religiously inclined, this is apparent, right? So if we have the principle of sufficient reason, um, we are unique, right? We are different. So this it doesn't make sense for us to follow what everyone else is doing. We aren't supposed to be the same, right? So that much is logical. It follows. And we have the means to try to figure out what it is that we're supposed to do, and it begins with self discovery, right? So whatever we're going to try to do, we have to first figure out how we're going to think, how we're going to operate, how what are the tools that we're going to use to try to figure out what's going on in the world. And um, so some of the things there were, um, you know, like the PSR, the PS, all of that um, was gained through a sense of how our mind works, how we work, and how we interact with the world. So, um, so then you can ask the question, like I said, what is the purpose of a human? What makes a person a Muslim? What's what is a Muslim supposed to do, right? Um, what what is it different that a Muslim would do, that what is expected of a Muslim, and um, what is God's intent in creating us in this way rather than in some other way, and why will we be punished? And the point is that we'll be denying our own purpose, and why will we be rewarded? So we fulfill some purpose for which we will be rewarded. So it's important to figure out what our purpose is, and this is all in sort of line with understanding the spiritual part of the course. So if you look at in the Quran, if you try to figure out what is going on, and we've taken out the pertinent um, revelations, so that you know there's a lot going on in the Quran, and but if we take out what is the primary purpose, and if people say that uh, life is a test and that we are being tested, what is it that we're being tested on? Like what's the how an examination has a purpose, right? A test itself can't be a purpose, right? We weren't created just to be test subjects. What is it that is being tested about us? And so if we look at the Quran, some things become quite clear, right? Now, by the way, the word Allah just means means the, and La means God. So the God, um, quite clearly um, in line with our understanding of the GCB. But anyways, and another one of his names is Al Haq, and by far that's one of the most important names uh, of Allah, because Al Haq means the truth or the reality, and that becomes quite clear in the Quran, right? So, so high above all is Allah, the Sovereign, the truth, Al Haq. And O Muhammad, do not hasten with the recitation of the Quran before its revelation is completed to you, and say, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge." Now, um, this part, so high above all is Allah, the Sovereign, the truth. So he's saying something about himself, right? That's important. That is because Allah is the truth, and because He gives life to the dead, and because He is over all things competent. Now, this is again um, insistence about Him being the truth. An interesting thing to say, you would think, right? Um, okay, so he's saying we have something about Him. He's saying that He's the truth. All right. How does that relate to us? Let's see. So we have now two revelations in which he says that his word is the truth, or his word is reality. And so he says, and the day he says be, for a thing to be, and it is, his word is the truth. And the word of your Lord has been fulfilled in truth and in justice. None can alter his words, and he is the hearing, the knowing. Now, once again, we know that he says that he is the truth, and now he's saying his word is the truth. Alright, two important things to keep in mind. And now we're studying this, we're trying to figure out what our purpose is. And to figure out our purpose, we have to figure out the relation between him and us. Um, and we might not do that like we might not do that to the whole extent in this course, but um, we'll get to the primary concern, right? And his primary concern is to guide us to the truth. The truth is from your Lord, so never be among the doubters. And those who have been given knowledge see that what is revealed to you from your Lord is the truth, and it guides to the path of the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. Now, he's saying that the truth guides to the path of the exalted in might. So, and he's referred to himself as the truth, right? From and then he's also saying that the knowledge that you have been given, what is revealed to you from your Lord is the truth, um, and it guides to the path. Okay, and this is where we're getting closer and closer to our purpose, and those who have been given knowledge. Uh, so so the path of the exalted in might. If you want to get to that, you have to discover the truth. And in what sense? So let's look at this some more, right? Now, the Quran is a book sent in truth, also in the Quran. That is because Allah has sent down the book in truth. And indeed, those who differ over the book are in extreme dissension. Now, um, a couple of things are becoming quite apparent. I mean, if they aren't apparent yet, they will be soon. So, let me just complete the slides before I talk about this. Okay. Now, message to the humankind. Now, this is to all humans, right? So, this is important for us. O mankind, the messenger has come to you with the truth from your Lord. So believe, it is better for you. But if you disbelieve, then indeed to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth, and ever is Allah knowing and wise. Now, clearly, um, there's something interesting going on here. You're being asked to do just one thing, believe, and that is better for you. But if you disbelieve, um, there's a subtle threat that it's not better for you to disbelieve. But anyways, let's look at this some more. Um, so all right, so we're going to have some interesting um, points here. See, the way that we got to Revelation, or we started looking at the Quran, is that first we had to go through a path of reason. That is, we thought through multiple problems, asked multiple questions. We got to a point where reason couldn't get us any further, right? So, our purpose, the reason for the existence of the universe, why should we be good, all of those questions, those ultimate sort of questions, reason can't answer those questions. And that is where the role of revelation comes in. But the important thing here is that reason is going to be more important, more basic than revelation. In what sense? So reason is going to be used to interpret the revelation, because there are many ways that the revelation can be interpreted, right? And we see this all over the world. Now, what is important is, if we keep if we keep reason as the grounds, then reason defines the its own limits. It cannot be, you cannot say to people, oh, don't ask this question because you will lose your faith, or because you will lose your belief. If questions um, let you lose your faith, then your faith was not faith. It wasn't justified. It wasn't strong enough, right? It was blind faith. If it's blind faith, if it's just what you were born with, then it's none of your doing, right? You could have been born anywhere and believed whatever was being said to you. That's a problem, right? So, and then whatever book was being given to you, that would have been what you would have treated as revelation. So it's important that you don't lose sight, or you don't lose um, sense of how important reason is, and where it brings everything else into um, everything else into contention. Because see, everyone is born, whether wherever they're born with the ability to reason. So whoever God created, and we have a sense, obviously we're talking about this in an Islamic sense, but if God created all of us and he wants the same thing from all of us, then whatever we're supposed to be using has to be with all of us. And with all of us is the ability to reason, and that's important, right? So in that sense, um, Sharia depends on the power of truth and reason, and is not in a position to set limits on this power, because it is the very basis of its own authority. Um, um, yeah, I've pretty much explained what this means. Anyways, and this is a summary of the points that we just talked about. Uh, and wherever, I just said, wherever reason cannot answer questions, that's where revelation comes in, right? So where reason falls, revelation picks up the pieces. Now, now here's the point about purpose. What is it about the believers that is so great that they will be rewarded, and what is so bad about the disbelievers that they will be punished? And seemingly, I I've given you the revelations. The point here is that we're all born with the ability to reason, and with the ability to try to figure out what the truth is. And God claims that He is the truth, and that His word, the Quran, is the truth. And we are supposed we are supposed to discover the truth, and that is the path, and it guides us to the path of the exalted in might, right? So our purpose is to find the truth wherever we're born. And the believers are going to be rewarded because they were on the path to the truth, or they uphold the truth. You cannot be born a Muslim, you have to form a belief. That's important. That's the spiritual sense of the word. And the truth of the matter is, in that sense, right? So your relation to God is that you probably shouldn't go there. Anyways, um, so yeah, it is in that sense that um, that we look at um, revelations, right? And remember, we're going to use PS, PSR, all of that, right? So, what does PS mean? God has conveyed His words to us in the Quran. God is God, right? So, He wouldn't fail to transmit what He wants us to know. So, um, unless we have reason, unless we have sufficient reason to doubt what is written in the Quran, I mean, doubt as in, so in the Quran there are two types of um, revelations, ayats. Half of them or some of them are called muhkamat, that is clear ayat, and the other half are called mutashabihat or metaphorical or vague, um, in the sense that they then become uh, flexible. So those are flexible to the times, and the fixed ones are like clear muhkamat, hukum, from hukum, right? So those are clear rules that you have to follow. The other are mutashabihat, those are um, vague or metaphorical. They change their meaning, or their interpretations change with time, um, and that is how reason comes in. Reason tries to work and rework and reinterpret the revealed text in whatever way. But the important thing is, you cannot you cannot reason around the clear verses, the rules. If it's clear what is being said, then God being, you cannot doubt that God would have meant it in some other way. God will, the principle of simplicity states that um, something is written the way, and you would interpret in this way. It is written in the way because that is how it was supposed to be read, and God wouldn't fail to say it in some other way if He wanted to say something else. Anyways, that was getting into the technicals of it a little bit. So yeah, that is where I feel um, I I would have liked more classes, and we might have gone in depth on um, maybe Judaism, maybe Christianity, why they don't work, why we go with Islam, all of that stuff. But we can't go into that uh, because of obvious reasons. We didn't have enough lectures, um, and there's no point teaching that material because that would require a lot of discussion to be had. But anyways, so yeah, this is where we end. This is a nice revelation for me to end this lecture on. I think this is it. So yeah, your relation, your understanding of your purpose, how you, what you're supposed to be doing, and what God wants you to do, what your relation with God is. That is the spiritual side of things, and the moral side of things is how then, once you understand what God wants you to do, in that context, how you react to other people or how you interact with them, that is the moral sense. And uh, love of God, love of neighbor, that is the um, essence of the Hebrew tradition. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of them have, love of God, love of neighbor, hukuk Allah, hukuk al ibad. Um, so yeah, spirituality and morality. Morality has no sense if it is not grounded in spirituality. If you do not understand your purpose, then you cannot place other people into context. If you have a purpose, you have direction. If you have direction, you can place everything else around you. So in like sync with the direction that you want to go in. So that's where religion comes in, that's where spirituality comes in.